Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. His ship was 3 days into what should have been a simple survey mission near the Kepler 442 system. The year was 2387, and humans had been exploring space for over 300 years. In all that time, they had found empty planets, dead rocks, and nothing that suggested intelligent life existed anywhere in the galaxy. Jake was 42 years old and had spent half his life in space. He had brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the edges and tired eyes that had seen too many empty star systems. Like most exploration captains, he had long ago given up hope of finding anything more exciting than unusual mineral deposits or new types of space dust. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Amy Foster from the sensor station, "I'm picking up something strange on long-range scanners." Jake walked over to her station, his boots making soft sounds on the metal deck. The Liberty was not a large ship. It carried a crew of 36 people and was built for long-range exploration, not combat. Its only weapons were basic defensive systems meant to deal with space debris or small asteroids. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, looking at the sensor display. The screen showed a three-dimensional map of the nearby star system, with small dots representing planets and asteroids. "There's a large object about 2 million kilometers ahead. It's too big to be natural, but it's not moving like a ship either," Amy said. She was young, maybe 25, and this was her first deep space mission. Her voice had the excitement of someone who might have just discovered something important. Jake felt his heart beat a little faster. After 20 years of finding nothing but rocks and gas, this could be the moment that changed everything. "Can you get a better reading?" "Working on it, sir." Amy's fingers moved quickly over her control panel. The main screen changed to show a detailed view of the object. It was clearly artificial, with smooth surfaces and geometric shapes that no natural process could create. "Captain, it's huge, almost 10 kilometers long." The bridge went quiet except for the soft hum of the life support systems. Every crew member was staring at the screen, looking at humanity's first proof that they were not alone in the universe. "Communications. Any signals coming from that thing?" Jake asked, and Signed Pete Collins shook his head. "Nothing on any frequency we monitor, sir." But double quotes, he paused and adjusted his headset. "Wait, I'm getting something now. It's very faint." Before Pete could say more, the object on the screen began to change. Lights appeared along its hull, and smaller ships detached from its sides. The smaller ships were each about the size of the Liberty, but their design was completely alien. They had curved hulls and moved through space in ways that seemed to defy physics. "Captain, they're heading straight for us," reported Lieutenant Commander Susan Wright from the navigation station. Susan was Jake's second-in-command, a steady woman in her 30s who had served with him for 5 years. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked. "At their current speed, about 10 minutes." Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment every exploration captain had dreamed about and feared: first contact with an alien species. The protocols were clear, but no amount of training could prepare someone for the real thing. "All stations implement first contact. Procedures. Communications, prepare the universal greeting transmission. Science, record everything. And someone get me a direct line to Earth." The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. The crew worked with quiet efficiency, knowing that what they did in the next hour might determine the future of humanity. The alien ships moved closer, their strange engines leaving no visible exhaust or energy signature that human sensors could. "Understand." "Captain," Pete said from communications, "I'm receiving a transmission. It's coming through on multiple frequencies, and somehow it's being translated into English." "Put it on speakers," a voice filled the bridge. It was clearly artificial, probably computer-generated, but it spoke perfect English with what sounded almost like a slight British accent. "Human vessel, you are ordered to maintain your current position and prepare to be boarded. This sector of space is under the authority of the Galactic Concordat. Your species has violated the terms of your containment." Jake looked around the bridge. Every face showed the same confusion he felt. "Containment? What containment?" This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Liberty. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. We have no knowledge of any containment or authority in this region. There was a pause before the alien voice responded. Captain Morrison, your ignorance is not surprising. Your species has been isolated for your own protection and the safety of civilized worlds. A delegation will board your ship to explain the situation. Do not attempt to resist or flee. One of the alien ships moved closer to the Liberty. It was sleek and beautiful in a way that human ships were not. Where human vessels were built for function with sharp angles and practical designs, this ship looked like it had been grown rather than built, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to flow like water. Captain, they're requesting docking. Permission? Susan reported. Jake had to make a decision that could affect all of humanity. They could try to run, but the alien ships had already demonstrated technology far beyond human capabilities. They could try to fight, but the Liberty's small defensive weapons would be useless against ships that could move through space like those could. Grant docking permission, Jake said. But keep all crew at alert status. 20 minutes later, Jake stood in the Liberty's main airlock with Susan and 2 security officers. The alien ship had attached itself to their hull with some kind of technology that created a perfect seal without any visible connecting tube or tunnel. The airlock door opened, and Jake got his first look at intelligent alien life. The being that entered was tall, maybe 7 feet, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its head was larger than a human head, with big black eyes and no visible nose or mouth. It wore what looked like a uniform made of some shimmering material that changed color as it moved. Captain Morrison, the being said, though Jake could not see how it was speaking without a mouth. The voice seemed to come from a small device attached to its chest. I am Ambassador Zexthai of the Galactic Concordat. I am here to inform your species of your status within civilized space. Jake tried to hide his nervousness. Ambassador, welcome aboard the Liberty. We're honored to make first contact with your people. This is not first contact, Captain. Your species was discovered over 400 years ago. We have been watching you since that time. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. 400 years? That would mean aliens had been watching Earth since before humans even left their solar system. I don't understand, Jake said. Ambassador Zexthai moved deeper into the ship. Its 4 arms moved independently, one holding what looked like a recording device, another carrying something that might have been a weapon, and the other 2 gesturing as it spoke. Your species was classified as potentially dangerous due to your violent nature and rapid technological development. A quarantine zone was established around your star system to prevent you from spreading into civilized space. However, your recent expansion beyond the designated boundaries has forced us to make direct contact. They reached the ship's small conference room, where Jake had arranged for the meeting to take place. As they sat down, Jake tried to process what he was hearing. Quarantine zone? Are you saying humanity has been kept prisoner in our own solar system? Not prisoner, Captain. Protected and protecting others from you. Your species has a disturbing history of violence and conquest. In the past 4 centuries, you have fought over 200 wars on your home planet alone. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Those wars taught us important lessons. Humanity has grown beyond our violent past, perhaps, but that remains to be proven, which brings me to why I am here. The ambassador placed a small device on the table. It projected a 3-dimensional display showing the local region of space. The Galactic Concordat consists of over 2,000 species across 12 sectors. We maintain peace and order throughout this region of the galaxy. The display showed countless star systems with different colors representing different alien civilizations. Jake realized that while humanity thought they were alone, they had actually been surrounded by alien life for centuries. Your rapid expansion has brought you to our attention, the ambassador continued. The Concordat Council has decided that humanity must now choose. You can accept membership in the Concordat as a junior species with limited rights and territories. Or you can return to your original boundaries and remain isolated. There is a third option, but I do not recommend it. What's the third option? Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew. Elimination. Some council members believe humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to continue existing. The room fell silent. Jake looked at Susan, who had gone pale. The security officers shifted, nervously, their hands moving closer to their weapons. How long do we have to decide? Jake asked. 90 standard days? The decision must be made by your species as a whole, not by individual ships or colonies. Jake stood up slowly. Ambassador, I need to ask you something. Do you really think you can force humanity to make this choice? For the first time, the ambassador. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had not slept in 36 hours. She sat in her laboratory at the Titan Research Institute, surrounded by dozens of computer screens showing data from the Liberty's encounter with the aliens. Empty coffee cups and food containers covered every available surface, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. As the head of xenological studies, she was the person everyone looked to for answers about their new enemies. The problem was that the answers she was finding were terrifying. Computer, play the communication recordings again, she said, rubbing her tired eyes. The alien voice filled the laboratory for the 20th time that day. Elena listened carefully to every word, every pause, every inflection in the artificial translation. She had been studying theoretical alien contact for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of species that had been watching humanity like animals in a zoo. Her assistant, Dr. Marcus Kim, entered the lab carrying 2 more cups of coffee. Marcus was young, barely 30, with the kind of enthusiasm that Elena remembered having before she realized how dangerous the universe really was. Any new insights? Marcus asked, setting a coffee cup next to Elena's keyboard. Too many, Elena replied. And none of them good. Look at this. She pointed to one of the screens showing a timeline. The ambassador said they discovered humanity 400 years ago. That would be around 1987 by the old calendar. So they've been watching us since before we even had permanent space stations, Marcus said. Exactly. They saw every war, every conflict, every mistake we made as a species. But Marcus, think about what that means. They watched us fight, world. War too. They watched the Cold War. They saw humanity at our absolute worst. Elena pulled up another screen showing population data and technological development charts. But they also saw something else. Look at this pattern. Every major war or crisis pushed human technology forward by decades. The development of radar, jet engines, computers, nuclear power, space travel, all of it came from military necessity. Marcus studied the data. You think that's what scares them? That we advance so quickly under pressure? I think it's worse than that. Elena opened a new file containing her analysis of the Concordat's message. Listen to how the ambassador spoke. They called us potentially dangerous and mentioned our disturbing rate of technological development. These aren't the words of a species that's simply worried about human violence. These are the words of a species that's afraid we might become a threat to them. The laboratory door opened and Colonel Danny Brooks entered. He was a tall man in his early 40s, with short black hair and the kind of steady demeanor that made people trust him instantly. Danny had graduated from the Martian Military Academy 5 years earlier and was considered one of the brightest tactical minds in the Seoul Defense Force. Dr. Rodriguez, I need everything you've learned about these aliens. The Joint Chiefs are meeting in 6 hours and they want a full threat assessment. Elena gestured to the chaos around her laboratory. Colonel, I've been working non-stop since we received Morrison's transmission. The picture I'm putting together isn't good. She pulled up a new display showing what they knew about Concordat military forces. Based on the sensor readings from the Liberty and the communications intercepts, we're looking at a military force of at least 50,000 ships spread across 12 sectors of space. Danny whistled softly. How does that compare to our forces? We have 1,200 military ships total. Most of them are patrol vessels or system defense craft. We have maybe 50 ships that could be considered true warships. So we're outnumbered about 40 to 1, Danny said calmly. It's worse than that. Elena opened another file. Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of ours. Energy. Shields, plasma weapons, faster than light communication systems. The Liberty sensors could barely detect their ships until they wanted to be seen. Marcus looked up from his computer. But there's something else, isn't there? You've been acting like you found something important. Elena smiled for the first time in days. I did find something important. Marcus, what's the one thing that every human military conflict has taught us? That war drives innovation? Marcus suggested. Close, but not quite. War drives desperation. And desperate humans are the most dangerous thing in the universe. Elena pulled up historical records showing technological breakthroughs during major human conflicts. Look at this pattern. Every time humanity faced an enemy with superior technology or numbers, we found ways to level the playing field. We developed new tactics, new weapons, new strategies that our enemies never expected. Danny leaned forward, interested. Give me examples. World War II. The Americans were fighting an enemy that had been preparing for war for years. So they developed the atomic bomb in less than 4 years. The Pacific War. American forces were outnumbered and fighting across thousands of miles of ocean. So they invented amphibious warfare tactics that let them island hop across the Pacific faster than anyone thought possible. Elena opened another file. Korean War. Chinese and North Korean forces had huge numerical advantages. American forces developed helicopter warfare and close air support tactics that multiplied their effectiveness. Vietnam fighting an enemy that knew the terrain better than they did. Americans developed special operations forces and electronic warfare capabilities. I see where you're going with this, Danny said. But those were human enemies. These aliens have had centuries to study our tactics. That's exactly my point. Elena said, her excitement growing. They've been watching us fight other humans. They understand human versus human warfare. But they've never seen what humans do when we're fighting for our survival against a completely alien enemy. Marcus pulled up another screen. There's something else. Look at the ambassador's language patterns. When it talked about the Concordat, it used phrases like maintaining peace and civilized worlds. But when it talked about dealing with resistant species, the language changed completely. Elena nodded. I noticed that too. The Concordat isn't just a peaceful federation. They're an empire built on forcing other species to submit. The ambassador mentioned that some council members wanted to simply eliminate humanity rather than deal with us. Which means they've done this before, Danny realized. They've conquered other species. Probably hundreds of them over the centuries, Elena agreed. But here's the thing, Colonel. Every species they conquered probably thought they were the most advanced, most capable military force in their region. Then the Concordat showed up with overwhelming technology and numbers, and those species surrendered rather than face extinction. Danny was quiet for a moment, thinking, but Americans don't surrender. Exactly. And I don't think the Concordat understands what that means. They're offering us the same choice they probably offered every other species, submit or die. They expect us to be reasonable and choose submission. Elena pulled up the final piece of her analysis. Colonel, I've been studying the sensor readings from the Liberty's encounter. The alien ships are definitely more advanced than ours, but they're not invincible. Their energy shields seem to be designed to stop directed energy weapons like lasers or plasma bolts. But I'm not sure they're designed to stop kinetic weapons. Kinetic weapons? Marcus asked. Bullets, basically. Chunks of metal accelerated to very high speeds. It's primitive technology by galactic standards, but that might be why it could work. Danny's eyes lit up, like firing a cannonball at a spaceship designed to stop laser beams. Something like that. Plus, we have one huge advantage they don't know about. What's that? Elena grinned. Nuclear weapons. The ambassador mentioned that the Concordat has maintained peace for 1,000 years. I bet most of their member species never developed nuclear technology because they were never desperate enough. But humans built nuclear weapons when we were still fighting with propeller-driven aircraft. The laboratory fell quiet as the implications sank in. Danny was the first to speak. Dr. Rodriguez, how quickly can you put together a complete technical analysis? I need to know everything about their capabilities and every possible weakness we might be able to exploit. Give me 48 hours and I'll have everything we know. Good, because I have a feeling we're going to need every advantage we can. Danny headed toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. In your analysis, include recommendations for unconventional weapons and tactics. If we're going to fight these aliens, we need to fight them in ways they've never seen before. After Danny left, Elena and Marcus worked in silence for several hours. The more data they analyzed, the clearer the picture became. The Galactic Concordat was a massive empire that had conquered most of the galaxy through a combination of superior technology and overwhelming force. Species that resisted were destroyed as examples to others, but there was something else in the data that gave Elena hope. The Concordat's message had been broadcast on multiple frequencies and transmitted to Earth as well as the Liberty. That suggested they wanted other species to know about humanity's situation. They were planning to make an example of the human race. Marcus, pull up the communication logs again. I want to analyze the technical specifications of their transmission system. President William Carter stood at the window of the Oval Office, looking out at the rose garden where his wife used to walk before the cancer took her 3 years ago. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that had deepened considerably since Captain Morrison's message reached Earth 4 days ago. As the 47th President of the United States, he had dealt with economic crises, natural disasters, and political scandals. But nothing had prepared him for the choice now facing humanity. His Chief of Staff, Robert Hayes, entered the office carrying a thick folder. Robert was a thin man in his 50s who had served 3 presidents and had never seen anything like the current situation. Mr. President, the Joint Chiefs are ready for your decision on the Emergency Colonial Defense Act. They need your signature to begin full mobilization. Carter turned from the window and sat behind his desk. The folder contained military assessments, economic projections, and casualty estimates that made for grim reading. Every expert agreed on one thing. If humanity chose to fight the Galactic Concordat, millions of people would die. Robert, what's the latest from Congress? Both houses passed the emergency authorization by overwhelming margins. The vote in the Senate was 97-3. The House was even more decisive. Carter picked up his pen and signed the authorization. With that single signature, he placed every human settlement under military control and began the largest war mobilization in human history. God help us all, he said quietly. 2,000 miles away, General Patricia Lewis stood in the command center of the newly formed Terran Defense Force headquarters in Colorado Springs. Patricia was 54 years old, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 30 years in the military, rising through the ranks during the Belt Wars and the conflicts on the outer colonies. She was known for her tactical brilliance and her willingness to take risks that other commanders avoided. The command center was a massive room filled with screens showing the locations of every human military asset in the solar system and beyond. Red dots represented Terran Defense Force ships. Blue dots were civilian vessels that could be converted for military use, and green dots showed industrial facilities that were being retooled for weapons production. General, we have the latest production reports, said Colonel Sarah Martinez, Patricia's Chief of Staff. Sarah was younger, in her early 40s, with black hair pulled back in a military bun and the kind of precise manner that came from years of handling logistics. Patricia studied the reports on her tablet. The numbers were staggering. Every shipyard in human space had been converted to military production. Civilian factories were retooling to produce weapons, armor, and electronic systems. Mining operations in the asteroid belt were working around the clock to provide raw materials. How many ships can we produce in the next 85 days? Patricia asked. At current production rates, maybe 800 additional vessels. Most will be converted civilian ships with minimal armor and weapons, Patricia nodded. It wasn't enough to match the Concordat's numbers, but it might be enough to surprise them. What about the special projects? Sarah pulled up a classified file on her tablet. Dr. Murphy's team at Ceres has made significant progress. They've successfully tested the nuclear mine system and the kinetic bombardment weapons. The missile projects are ahead of schedule. Good, and our intelligence gathering? Captain Morrison is still in the outer systems, monitoring Concordat fleet movements. His report suggests they're positioning forces for a major assault, but they seem to be taking their time. They probably expect us to surrender before the deadline. Patricia smiled grimly. They don't know Americans very well, do they? In the asteroid belt, Dr. Kevin Murphy was having the best and worst time of his professional life. Kevin was 45 years old, with thinning red hair and the kind of intense focus that came from working on problems that could determine the fate of humanity. As the head of weapons development at the Ceres Research Facility, he was responsible for creating the tools that would let human forces fight aliens with technology centuries more advanced than their own. His laboratory was a controlled chaos of half-finished prototypes, testing equipment, and computer simulations. Kevin had not left the facility in 6 weeks, sleeping in his office and eating meals delivered by his assistants. The work was too important to waste time on normal human activities. Dr. Murphy, the test results from the Mark 7 warhead are ready, called out his assistant, Lieutenant Jennifer Cole. Jennifer was an engineering officer on loan from the Mars Defense Fleet. With the kind of technical knowledge that Kevin needed for his projects, Kevin looked at the data on his screen and grinned. Jennifer, this is perfect. The shaped nuclear charges can punch through anything we've tested them against. If the alien ships have the kind of energy shields Dr. Rodriguez described, these warheads should go right through them. What about the kinetic weapons project? Kevin led Jennifer to another section of the laboratory where a massive railgun was mounted on a test platform. The weapon was designed to fire small metal projectiles at tremendous speeds using magnetic acceleration. Watch this, Kevin said, activating the targeting system. The railgun fired a projectile the size of a pencil at a target made of the strongest materials available to human science. The projectile went through the target like it was made of paper. The physics are simple, Kevin explained. Energy shields are designed to stop energy weapons like lasers or plasma bolts, but a solid object moving at 10% of light speed carries so much kinetic energy that no known shield technology can stop it. Jennifer studied the test results. How many of these weapons can we produce? That's the beautiful part. The projectiles are just pieces of metal. We can make thousands of them from asteroid mining waste. The railgun launchers are more complex, but we can build them using modified industrial equipment. Kevin pulled up another file showing his most ambitious project. But this is what I'm really excited about. We're calling it the Hellfire missile system. The design showed a missile that combined human chemical propulsion with alien technology reverse-engineered from the sensor readings Captain Morrison had taken during the first contact encounter. How did you reverse-engineer alien technology from sensor readings? Jennifer asked. Dr. Rodriguez figured out how their communication systems work by analyzing the transmission patterns. Once we understood the basic principles, we could design human versions that do the same job using our technology. Kevin activated a simulation showing how the Hellfire missiles would work in combat. Each missile carries a nuclear warhead and uses alien-derived guidance systems to track targets. But here's the clever part. The missiles are designed to look like debris or asteroids until they're close enough to attack. The aliens won't see them coming, not until it's too late. Their sensors are designed to track ships and energy weapons, not chunks of rock that suddenly turn into guided missiles. Back on Earth, the mobilization was creating changes that went far beyond military preparations. In Detroit, factory worker Maria Santos was working 18-hour shifts producing targeting computers for the new weapon systems. Maria was 38 years old, with 2 children and a husband who had volunteered for the Space Force as soon as the emergency was declared. Maria, how many units did your line complete today? asked her supervisor, Frank Johnson. 47. Targeting computers and 36 navigation systems, Maria replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. The factory was running at maximum capacity, with workers pulling overtime shifts to meet production quotas that seemed impossible just weeks earlier. That's 15 more than yesterday. You keep this up and we might actually meet General Lewis's requirements. Maria nodded and returned to her workstation. She had never been particularly patriotic before the alien crisis, but something about being threatened by outside forces had awakened feelings she didn't know she had. Her grandfather had worked in similar factories during World War II, building the weapons that defeated Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Now she was carrying on that tradition, building weapons to fight aliens who thought humans would simply surrender. In Silicon Valley, programmer Steve Johnson was working on artificial intelligence systems for ship navigation. Steve was 29 years old, a computer genius who had been making video games before the emergency call went out for anyone with advanced programming skills. "Steve, how's the AI development coming?" asked his team leader, Dr. Angela Ross. "Better than expected. The navigation AI can process sensor data and make tactical decisions faster than any human pilot. But I'm working on something else that might be even more important." Steve pulled up a program he had been developing in his spare time. "I call it the Chaos Protocol. It's designed to randomly alter our communication patterns, flight paths, and tactical decisions to make it impossible for enemy intelligence systems to predict our behavior." "Explain how that works." "Dr. Rodriguez thinks the aliens have been monitoring our communications and studying our tactical patterns. If that's true, they probably have computer models that can predict how human forces will respond in different situations. But if we introduce random elements into our decision-making process..." Captain Rick Turner stood on the bridge of his converted mining ship, the Lady Liberty, watching the sensor displays with growing concern. Rick was 51 years old, with weathered hands and gray-streaked hair that showed his years working. In the asteroid belt, he had spent most of his life hauling ore and ice between mining stations. Never imagining he would end up commanding a warship, the Lady Liberty was not much to look at. She had been a cargo hauler for 23 years. Before the emergency conversion program turned her into something that barely qualified as a military vessel. Her hull was patched and repaired in dozens of places, and her engines made sounds that would worry any sensible engineer. But she carried Dr. Murphy's new weapon systems, and Rick had a crew of miners and freight haulers who knew how to fight. "Captain, I'm reading multiple hyperspace signatures," reported Lisa Park from the sensor station. Lisa was 28 years old, the daughter of asteroid miners who had grown up on frontier stations. She knew how to read sensor displays better than most trained military officers. Rick looked at the main screen showing the space around New Austin Colony. New Austin was a mining settlement in the Proxima Centauri system, home to about 40,000 people who extracted rare metals from the system's asteroid belt. It was also one of the most remote human settlements, which made it an obvious target for the aliens' first strike. "How many ships?" Rick asked. "Still counting, sir." "At least 200, maybe 300. Rick felt his stomach drop. His small defense fleet consisted of 12 converted mining ships and 4 actual military vessels on loan from the Seoul Defense Force. They were outnumbered at least 25 to 1, probably more. "Communications, get me Captain Davis on." The Frontier Guard. Rick ordered. Captain Janet Davis commanded the small military force assigned to protect the outer colonies. She was a career officer in her 40s, with short blonde hair and the kind of steady voice that kept people calm during emergencies. "Rick, I'm seeing the same sensor readings you are," Davis said over the communication channel. "This is what we'd been preparing for? Any word from the colony?" "Governor Mason has ordered all civilians into the emergency shelters. Mining operations have been shut down and the ore processing stations have been evacuated." Rick nodded. They had practiced this scenario dozens of times over the past month. New Austin's civilian population would take shelter in the deep mining tunnels while the defense fleet tried to buy them time to escape or hide. Janet, do you really think we can hold them off? We don't have to hold them off, Rick. We just have to make them pay for what they take. The alien ships began emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. Rick had never seen anything so beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The Concordat vessels were sleek and graceful, with hull designs that looked more like sculpture than military hardware. They moved through space with an ease that human ships could never match. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the alien fleet," reported Communications Officer Mike Santos. Mike was Lisa's younger brother, barely 22, but he had the best ears for signal processing in the outer colonies. "Put it on speakers." The same artificial voice that Captain Morrison had heard weeks earlier filled the bridge of the Lady Liberty. "Human vessels, this is Fleet Marshal Korthik of the Concordat forces. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Your colony will be occupied, but your population will not be harmed if you comply." Rick picked up the communication microphone. "Flee." "Marshal, this is Captain Rick Turner, commanding the new Austin Defense Force. I've got a counteroffer for you." "State your terms, human." "You can turn your ships around and go back where you came from. If you try to take this colony, we're going to make you regret it." There was a long pause before the alien commander responded. "Captain Turner, you are outnumbered more than 20 to 1. Your ships are converted civilian vessels with minimal weapons. This is not a battle you can win." "Maybe not," Rick replied. "But it's not going to be the easy victory you're expecting either." Rick cut the communication channel and turned to his crew. "All right, people, this is what we've been training for. Remember, we're not trying to win a traditional space battle. We're trying to hurt them badly enough that they think twice about attacking other human colonies." The first phase of the battle began when the Concordat fleet moved into attack formation. Their ships advanced in perfect coordination, energy shields glowing as they prepared to destroy the small human force. Fleet Marshal Korthik had conquered dozens of species over his long career, and he expected this engagement to follow the same pattern as all the others. A brief show of force, followed by surrender when the enemy realized how hopeless their situation was. What he got instead was the first real surprise of his military career. The human ships did not retreat or surrender. Instead, they scattered in all directions, using the asteroid belt around New Austin as cover. The converted mining ships, with their industrial-grade engines and reinforced hulls, could maneuver through the asteroid field in ways that the larger Concordat vessels could not match. "All ships execute Plan Delta." Rick ordered over the fleet communication channel. Plan Delta was the product of weeks of planning by human military strategists who understood that they could not win a conventional space battle. Instead, they would turn the engagement into the kind of close-quarters fighting that played to human advantages. The Lady Liberty dove behind a large asteroid, using its bulk to hide from Concordat sensors. Rick's crew had spent days installing Dr. Murphy's new weapons systems, including railgun launchers that could fire metal projectiles at tremendous speeds. "Lisa, do you have a target?" Rick asked. "Concordat cruiser at bearing 270, range 50,000 kilometers. She's moving slow, probably trying to get a clear shot at the frontier guard. Fire when ready." The railgun launcher made almost no sound when it fired. The metal projectile, no bigger than a softball, accelerated to 10% of light speed in less than a second. To the Concordat cruiser sensors, it looked like a piece of space debris, until it punched through their energy shields and tore a hole through their hull. The alien ship lurched as atmosphere, and debris vented into space. Emergency lights flashed along its hull as damage control systems tried to cope with a type of attack they had never encountered before. "Direct hit," Lisa reported. "Target is venting atmosphere and appears to be losing power." Similar attacks were happening throughout the asteroid field as the other converted mining ships used their knowledge of the local terrain to ambush Concordat vessels. The aliens had superior technology, but they were fighting in an environment that favored the humans. Captain Davis, commanding the Frontier Guard, led the 4 military vessels in hit-and-run attacks against the larger Concordat ships. Her strategy was to get close enough to use nuclear warheads, then retreat before the aliens could respond effectively. "All military vessels, target the lead dreadnought," Davis ordered. "We're going to show them what American nuclear engineering can do." The 4 human warships approached the massive Concordat flagship from different angles, using the confusion of the asteroid field battle to mask their approach. When they were within range, each ship fired a salvo of nuclear-tipped missiles. The missiles were Dr. Murphy's Hellfire design, programmed to look like debris until they were close enough to lock onto their targets. By the time the Concordat sensors detected them, it was too late to stop them all. 4 nuclear explosions lit up space around the alien flagship. Its energy shields flared and collapsed under the sustained bombardment, and secondary explosions began tearing through its hull. Fleet Marshal Korthek, commanding the battle from his flagship's bridge, watched in growing disbelief as his fleet took casualties that should have been impossible. The humans were using weapons and tactics that no civilized species would employ. Nuclear weapons in space combat were considered barbaric. Kinetic weapons were primitive and unreliable. Fighting in asteroid fields was dangerous and unpredictable, but they were working. "Fleet Marshal, we have lost 16 vessels with severe damage to 23 more," reported his tactical officer. "The human forces are still operational and continue to inflict casualties." Korthak had expected to lose perhaps 1 or 2 ships during the conquest of New Austin, acceptable casualties, for adding another human colony to Concordat territory. Instead, he was looking at losses that would require him to explain his tactics to the High Council. "Order all ships to maximum attack formation. Destroy every human vessel and bombard the colony from orbit." The second phase of the battle began when the Concordat fleet stopped trying to minimize casualties and focused on overwhelming the human defenders through sheer firepower. Plasma bolts and energy beams filled space around the asteroid field as dozens of alien ships concentrated there. Fire on the human positions. The Frontier Guard was the first to fall. Captain Davis's ship took a direct hit from a Concordat dreadnought. That vaporized her forward sections and killed half her crew. As her ship began to break apart, Davis made the decision that would inspire human resistance fighters for generations to come. "All remaining ships, this is Davis, I'm setting collision course with the alien flagship. Give them hell." Admiral Lisa Hayes stood in the command center of the USS Constitution, her mobile command ship that had been moving through the outer solar system for the past week. Lisa was 47 years old, with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much combat during the Belt Wars. As the commander of all human military forces, she carried the weight of humanity's survival on her shoulders. The main display showed 12 different star systems where Concordat fleets were positioning for simultaneous attacks. Intelligence reports indicated that over 30,000 alien ships were preparing to strike at every major human settlement at once. It was the largest military operation in galactic history, designed to crush human resistance before it could spread to other species. "Admiral, final reports from all system commanders," said Captain Julie Martinez, Hayes's chief of staff. Julie was 39 years old, a tactical genius who had developed many of the strategies that would soon be put to the test. Hayes studied the reports on her tablet. Every human settlement was as ready as they could be, but the numbers were still terrifying. Humanity had managed to build their fleet up to about 2,000 ships, but most were converted civilian vessels or hastily constructed patrol craft. Against 30,000 Concordat warships, the odds were hopeless by any reasonable standard. "Julie, have you heard anything from Colonel Brooks? His last transmission was 6 hours ago. Operation Lexington is proceeding on schedule, but he's maintaining radio silence until the attack begins." Hayes nodded. Operation Lexington was humanity's secret weapon, a strike deep into Concordat territory that would hopefully draw attention away from the defense of human space. It was also probably a suicide mission, but Brooks had volunteered anyway. The attack began at exactly 0800 Earth Standard Time, with Concordat fleets emerging from hyperspace in 12 different systems simultaneously. The aliens had learned from the Battle of New Austin and were not taking any chances. Each attack force was led by experienced commanders with orders to destroy all human military assets and occupy every colony. In the Mars system, Captain Julie Martinez commanded the defense from her flagship, the retrofitted heavy cruiser Boston. Tea Party. The ship was named after the famous act of rebellion that had helped start the American Revolution, and Julie intended to live up to that legacy. All ships, execute defensive pattern Alpha. Julie ordered as 60 Concordat vessels approached Mars orbital space. The human strategy was not to meet the aliens in open battle, where superior numbers and technology would quickly overwhelm the defenders. Instead, they turned the inner solar system into a deadly maze of obstacles, traps, and ambush points. Mars itself was surrounded by a network of orbital defense platforms, asteroid mining stations, and industrial facilities that had all been converted into weapons platforms. The space between Mars and the asteroid belt was filled with debris fields, sensor decoys, and hidden missile launchers. The Concordat fleet advanced in perfect formation, their energy shields glowing as they prepared to sweep aside human resistance. But as they moved deeper into the Mars system, they began encountering obstacles that no civilized military force would deploy. The first surprise was the gravity wells. Dr. Murphy's team had developed a way to create artificial gravitational fields using modified mining equipment. As Concordat ships passed through seemingly empty space, sudden gravitational anomalies pulled them off course and into collision paths with asteroids or each other. "Target acquired," reported Lieutenant Commander Sam Wilson from the Boston Tea Party's tactical station. Concordat heavy cruiser caught in gravity well number 7. Julie watched as the alien ship struggled against the artificial gravity field, its engines straining to break free. Fire nuclear torpedoes, full spread. 6 nuclear warheads streaked through space toward the trapped Concordat vessel. Its energy shields flared as they tried to stop the primitive human weapons, but the shields were designed for energy attacks, not the massive kinetic force of nuclear explosions. The alien ship's shields collapsed, and secondary explosions began tearing through its hull. Within minutes, it was drifting dead in space. Similar scenes were playing out throughout the Mars system as human defenders used every dirty trick they could think of. Asteroid mining charges were detonated to create debris clouds that blocked alien sensors. Industrial lasers meant for cutting metal were repurposed to slice through alien hull plating. Even the orbital garbage disposal systems were turned into weapons, launching tons of refuse at alien ships at high velocity. But the most effective weapon was something the Concordat had never encountered before: American stubbornness. When Concordat forces finally reached the orbital defense platforms around Mars, they expected the human defenders to surrender rather than face certain death. Instead, they found stations that had been rigged with nuclear self-destruct charges, ready to take out any alien ship that came too close. Platform Commander Betty Johnson was 63 years old, a former mining supervisor who had volunteered to stay behind when the civilian population was evacuated. As Concordat boarding parties prepared to take her station, she activated the self-destruct sequence. "This is Platform 7 to all stations," she broadcast. "Remember the Alamo, boys and girls?" The explosion destroyed Platform 7 and took 3 Concordat vessels with it. Similar explosions echoed throughout the Mars system as station after station chose destruction over surrender. Meanwhile, in the outer solar system, Admiral Hayes was implementing the larger strategy that she hoped would turn the tide of the war. The Concordat had superior numbers and technology, but they had one critical weakness. They thought like a traditional military force. "All fleet units, begin Operation Minuteman," Hayes ordered. Operation Minuteman was named after the colonial militias that had fought the British during the American Revolution. Instead of trying to hold territory or win traditional battles, human forces would strike hard and fade away, forcing the Concordat to chase them across the solar system. The USS Constitution led a squadron of fast attack ships in hit-and-run strikes against Concordat supply lines. They would emerge from hiding places in the asteroid belt, launch nuclear missiles at alien transport ships, then disappear before the enemy could respond. "Admiral, target destroyed," reported the Constitution's weapons officer after another successful raid. "That's the third Concordat supply convoy this week." Hayes studied the tactical display showing Concordat fleet movements. The aliens were getting frustrated with their inability to bring human forces to decisive battle. They were used to enemies that would stand and fight, not guerrilla forces that appeared and vanished like ghosts. But the most important part of humanity's strategy was happening far from the Sol system, where Colonel Danny Brooks was leading Operation Lexington deep into Condit space. Brooks commanded a force of 50 ships, all volunteers who knew they probably would not survive the mission. Their target was Vex Prime, the regional capital of the Concordat Empire and home to over 2 billion aliens. "Colonel, we're approaching the outer sensor perimeter," reported Major Kate Anderson from the navigation station of Brooks's flagship, the Providence. Brooks looked at the tactical display showing the massive defense network around Vex Prime. Thousands of sensor stations, defense platforms, and patrol ships protected the most important Concordat world in this sector of the galaxy. "Remember, people, we're not here to conquer the planet," Brooks said over the fleet communication channel. "We're here to send a message." The attack on Vex Prime began with a series of coordinated strikes against the orbital defense platforms. Human ships, designed to look like asteroids or space debris, had infiltrated the system over the past week using intelligence gathered from intercepted Concordat communications. When the attack began, the Concordat defenders were caught completely off guard. They had been so focused on the invasion of human space that they never imagined humans would be capable of striking back at their own territory. Brooks's ships used every weapon in the human arsenal. Nuclear warheads destroyed orbital platforms. Kinetic weapons punched through alien shields. Computer viruses, based on the Chaos Protocol developed by Steve Johnson, infected Concordat communication systems and spread confusion throughout their command structure. The primary target was the main orbital defense platform, a massive structure that coordinated all military activity in the Vex Prime system. Brooks himself led the final assault, ramming his ship directly into the platform's command center. "This is Colonel Brooks to all Concordat forces," he broadcast on all frequencies, as his ship's reactor began to overload. "You wanted to know what humans do when you threaten us. This is what we do. We don't just defend our homes. We bring the fight to you." The explosion of the Providence destroyed the orbital platform and sent debris raining down on Vex Prime itself. But more importantly, Brooks's final message was picked up by every communication system in the sector. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Concordat Empire was being attacked in its own territory. The message spread throughout Concordat space faster than their sensors could stop it. Species that had been conquered and oppressed for centuries began to whisper about the humans who had dared to strike back. The psychological impact was devastating.